not bad. I won't bother with wiping the glue off because it's all going to be sanded and filled right. Maybe a couple hours, and then I'll be finished with this. Ready to start the other side. Hey, thanks for joining me. This is the second video on making a wooden wheel. On this one, we're going to work on the rim. By the end of the video, we should have it already partially glued, all of the cutting done on the inside and the outside diameter, and some round over on the corners. There's quite a few steps that go into doing that. There's a million ways to do it. I'll show you the way I chose to do it. Time to mark the circle. These circles I'm marking are for the inside and outside diameters that I need to cut. I'd originally planned on cutting them on a bandsaw, but the bandsaw blades weren't cooperating. They aren't available locally, so I decided to cut it with a jigsaw. But at any rate, these marks, I'm putting them on with a gold magic marker. It shows up well on walnut, are the outlines, and I'll cut to the outside edge of them for the rough cut for the outside and the inside diameter of the wheel. Watching this rough cut reminded me of a time when I was a junior getting ready to go into senior year in high school. That summer, I'd been working with an old carpenter. He had a couple of fellows working for him who didn't speak any English. They were doing a remodel job. And because they didn't speak English, they knew how to read a tape measure, they just didn't know how to say it. So what he had them do was holler out their dimensions as 34 quarter long. That meant that it was 34 3/8, the long side of a quarter. 34 and short half would be 34 3/8. Like that. That's the way they communicated. So one weekend I had the opportunity to go over to a friend of mine's, and his dad was building a new house. They were doing the framing. Had a couple of helpers there. I walked over and asked if I could help, and they said, yeah, take that measurement off of that windowsill. And I walked over there, put the tape measure down there, and I hollered back, that'll be 36 and the long side of a quarter. He got silent. One of the guys said, what'd you say? I said, 36 and the long side of a quarter. I just got stares. One of the carpenters walked over there to me, looked down at that tape measure and said, son, that's 36 and 3/8. You need to go back and take a math class. They all kind of giggled. I turned red. Not because I'd made a fool of myself, but, I was pretty well known as a guy who was good with numbers, except there. Okay, so now I need to find out where the center of this is so that whenever I put the router template on it, it will pivot and always be taking material off. Don't want to have any voids. As you can see right there, it's rough and that might be narrow. I don't know. But I need to make sure that I get this in the center so that I can hold the diameter that I want to hold. The diameter that I'm looking for is 33 inches. So that's a radius of 16 and a half. There's a couple of ways to do that. One way is to take a centering ruler like this one, which measures from 0 to 18 inches, which would give me 36, so it's long enough to do it, and placing that center on the block and going all the way around to find the center point. But I prefer another method. I have a compass that I made some years ago that's set at 16 and a half inches. Okay? If I take that and I go to the flats, which should be the narrowest place, and I put it right at the edge, and I strike an arc on the block, and I go all the way around, 8 sides, 8 marks. The hole it leaves in the center should be the safety spot, any place within there. should be a safe place to route it. So, I have the marks. They're crossed. And there's a safe spot. I'll show it to you. There is a safe spot on that block. And it's right there between all the marks. That's where I'll put the pivot for the router. Right there. Double check by running this all the way around the outside, making sure that it stays on the wood all the way around, that it touches wood every place it goes. That is the right place to put the center pivot for the router fixture. Okay, should be set. The router template is really simple. Okay, it has a place for the router to be mounted stationary. Okay. I'm using a Porter Cable 890 series router. It has a 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bit in it. It's a bearing bit. So I took the bearing off of the bottom, and because this is 1 3/4 inch wood, I'll be making it in 2 passes. If the bearing was on there, of course, I couldn't make the pass. The way this is set up is that the diameters are marked inside of the board, so that each mark is 1 inch apart, because that's a rate, or 1/2 inch apart for the short mark to the long mark to the short mark to the long mark. All of those are 1/2 inch, which of course yields a diameter twice that, or 1 inch diameter. So here at 16.5 inches, I have put the pivot for a 33-inch diameter circle. I'll put it on time lapse and you can watch as I route it. Well, been edging this wheel with the router, and I found out that the fixture I made didn't work very well, because every time I needed to move it, I could only move it in however many increments I could drill screws in. So what I decided to do is I decided to make an adaptation. So I cut it, made it in 2 parts, got me a piece of angle, and put a slot in 2 places so that I could put in wing nuts and let it slide to adjust. And that worked pretty good. I got the outside of it smoothed off pretty good. Now I'm working on the inside. Did all the rough passes. So now I've got one more finish pass that I need to make, and I'll set you up here and you can watch that. Small adjustment. That should be plenty right there. That's about a 64th of an inch, which, as you know, will translate into a 32nd of an inch on the diameter. In order to get this bit to go down deep enough, because of the thickness here, it actually goes through the bottom and penetrates into the wood. So when I start the router, I have to lift it up out of the wood. And once it gets in there, I can plunge it, lock it in place, and then route. Okay? I'll give that a shot. And that is the final pass. The inside be nice and smooth. Just a little sanding required. Not too bad. Got a few little chatter marks, but sandpaper will remove them really easy, really quick. Well, about ready to do the round over on the wheel. I'll set you up for a time lapse and we'll do it on the router table. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you don't mind, would you go ahead and poke that like button? Thank you.